Hi, I'm Leo, and I'm in Brooklyn, New York. What I'm about to show you is, I think, the most amazing, the most unusual, mind-blowing stories I've ever captured on camera. I'm in Williamsburg, and here, among bright, stylish trendsetters, young professionals and creatives, lives a huge community of Hasidic Jews.
Hasidic Jews are a sect of Judaism, and they're a bit more strict. Not a bit, a lot more strict.
And these are actually not the Jews who live in Israel, for example. It's a very closed, isolated Orthodox community that lives by very strict rules. They don't let outsiders in, and very little is known about their lives. It took me 2 months to find heroes for the video who would agree to tell us what is really happening here in this area, and in this community of Hasidic Jews. This is super exclusive and unique stuff, so let's get started.
When you say that somebody's Hasidic, it means that they have their origins, their roots in Eastern Europe. And the Hasidic movement started 300 years ago in those places. And then in the 1940s primarily, a lot of the Hasidic movements relocated here in the United States, primarily in Brooklyn.
Yoni is a rabbi of the Chabad Lubavitch Hasidic sect. Hasidism includes different branches and sects, which differ slightly from each other in their religious traditions, degree of privacy, and severity.
You have to realize that in Brooklyn alone, there are over 200 Hasidic groups.
Chabad Lubavitch is probably the most open branch of Hasidism. Well, at least they sometimes agree to tell strangers about themselves.
There's differences in stringency in religion.
Ari, who is 22 years old, grew up in the Satmar Hasidic sect. It is perhaps the most strict and closed off of the Hasidic sects. It is simply impossible to talk and get something useful out of someone from Satmar.
They don't speak to outside communities. They're more in turn. They don't go out much. I would think Satmar is one of the strictest ones, if not the strictest one.
Ari agreed to the conversation only because he left the community 5 years ago, which is a very rare case. It's almost impossible.
I came out or officially left the community at the age of 18. I guess at some point I figured out that lightning is not going to strike me if I stop following the rules. So I just kind of stopped.
What's interesting and very important is that the Hasidim do not speak English, even though they live in America. They speak Yiddish.
Yiddish is a language spoken by Jews, but not even all Jews. It's a very rare language, and I grew up speaking it. It was the only language I knew for our time.
As it turns out, not all of them speak English.
Yeah, I personally know people who, when they try to speak English, they can't make full sentences. They can't put, proper sentences together.
How is that possible, living in New York?
Well, if they're living in New York, but they never have to speak English, then why would they? For example, the groceries they're going to are all kosher places that speak Yiddish. The restaurants, most of the places you would interact with people.
So this is the main street, and what you'll notice about the main street is that none of the shops are part of chain stores. There's like no Starbucks, no McDonald's. Hasidim have like their own bubble, their own homes, their own shops, and their own schools.
This is Frida. I tried to persuade her for an interview for a very long time, and I failed.
This is me many moons ago at my engagement.
Frida also grew up in the very strict Satmar Hasidic community and also left it. For a woman, this is an absolutely mind-blowing case. It's a very bold, daring, basically impossible act. If you want to know how people live in other countries and see more of my travels, subscribe to this channel. The more subscribers, the more amazing places I can show you.
I lived in the Hasidic community for the first 25 years of my life. I grew up in a family of 15 children. My marriage was arranged to a boy from Williamsburg. He lived here on White.
Now Frida, to somehow earn a living, you will later find out that the women of Hasidim almost never work and receive practically no education. So now she has to guide tours in Hasidic Williamsburg to make a living. Of course, not in the part where she was born. So, she allowed me to just come and join her tour, film it on video. But Frida still refused to talk about her personal experience.
Into 770, most famous synagogue in the world, right here. So all nations of the world get energy and life from what happens in this building. Now, even if you look from a mystical point of view, the address is 770. That's all that is. It's known by its address. 7 is a very mystical Jewish number. Okay, so we're gonna go inside the synagogue. Okay, and as we walk in, on every door you have the mezuzah, which is a little scroll which has the most famous prayer in Judaism. Hear, O Israel, the God is our God, God is one. And every doorpost in the house is supposed to have one. It acknowledges God's presence in the room. So some people just touch it, some people touch it and kiss it. Welcome. So people are praying.
The purpose of our work in this world
This is the center of Chabad Lubavitch. This is where everyone comes to after they finish the learning in all the other yeshivas and schools, they come over here till they get married.
This part is a yeshiva, a rabbinical seminary, and they're studying the Talmud, or Jewish law, or Hasidic philosophy, and they're trying to either get the rabbinical degree or just learn, before they get married. This is sort of your last stop.
Because here's our home. This is where the Lubavitch Rebbe is. This is our home, and yeah, this is where we get our life from.
When I was in the community and I was going to Yeshiva, which is Hadidic school, I would wake up early, pretty much be in Yeshiva the entire day till the evening, sometimes even late evening. And there would be breakfast, lunch, dinner, the prayers, the learning, it would all be in the same facility. And then I would come home. And then tomorrow again the same thing. So there wasn't really any place for me to receive information or give information to other people.
Because you start school from when you're 2. Remember, we saw these little kids that were 2 going home from school. They didn't have side curls yet.
What age you started learning religious stuff?
Oh, very early, at like 2 or 3.
No way.
Yeah. We only go to religious school, so at the younger ages, we actually don't learn anything secular at all.
Girls are completely different. The boys study the Torah, they learn the religious texts, and the girls study a much more secular-based curriculum because the girls are not allowed to study the Torah. Like, as a girl, I wasn't allowed to study the holy books, so we had math, science, history, as well as modesty and portions of the Bible.
They're working in pairs, they're studying in pairs, it's called chabrusa, and basically they're tackling the Talmud. The Talmud's written in Aramaic, so they're basically trying to break their heads, and that comes through arguing with each other, challenging each other to understand what the Talmud Hasidic philosophy books. You'll have teachings about Messiah, Divrei Mashiach, the words of Messiah. You'll have a charity box. Before you pray, you're supposed to put a coin in, because it's a very easy way of saying, okay, I did something for somebody else today, so we give a coin. It's a perfect way to start your day before your prayer.
The Torah teaches us to believe in one God and to know that Mashiach is coming. Messiah is about to come and redeem us, and that's what it's all for.
I didn't want to pick up everything that they taught me in yeshiva, so I'm not the best person to ask questions about Judaism. You can ask me about my experience, but not about, you can ask me about Judaism, but half the answers are going to be, I don't know.
Torah это буква, что учится как говорит Бога, как сделать, что будет
relationship из Богом, как учится, что будет, как твоя жена, это то же самое. Бог это твой муж, понимаешь? Это relationship называется. А когда учится то, ты понимаешь, как надо сделать хороший relationship с Богом, как молиться хорошо, как чувство хорошо, как будет сердце хорошо.
No, I got a lot of the knowledge because it was forced upon me, but I didn't get as much as other people because I rejected much of it. I kept on asking why, and I kept on asking, can you prove that? And things like that. And they didn't appreciate that, and that was obviously not the way they had intended for us to learn.
In these circles, we don't say to kids, maybe kids, but we don't say to people in generally, oh, you'll understand later, you can't ask. You know, what religion tries to do is try to make sometimes people ignorant. You can't ask, just be quiet and do what you're told. Not here. You always have to go deeper in the mind. That's why it's called Chabad.
As a young kid, you get explained a lot the religion-related things as like the fact. This is how it is. We don't question it. This is how it is, and this is how it's always been, how it always will be, and that's the end of the story. So they start that from a very young age, that we don't question certain things, and we don't deviate from this road. That's where the people in charge have control over the raising of and I would say brainwashing of everyone, making sure that everybody's a loyal soldier.
In Judaism, obviously, the Torah over the generations since Mount Sinai has been transmitted through books. We're known as the people of the book. Look at all these books that they keep for study. The boys study Jewish law, Jewish Hasidic philosophy, Jewish mysticism.
So the books is something you'll see in every Jewish home. Lots of Jewish books for study. Studying the Bible, studying the Torah is part of everyday life, not just something you do in school. This is every day.
Is it allowed reading non-Jewish literature, like fiction, whatever, non-fiction?
When you say allowed.
Yeah, because that's what I heard.
There's no controlling, in this Hasidic community, there's no controlling anybody, and we don't put mandates or rules. So obviously, you know, I wouldn't want my kids reading novels which give them bad ideas and a lot of secular culture, which everyone, you know, knows there's not so much goodness in a lot of those things. So of course we try to fill their minds with holy ideas, stories from previous Hasidic rabbis or Jewish history. If you're going to read something, we obviously focus on the worthwhile stuff.
This is the public library here. And the irony is that if you grow up here, if you're a young girl here, you actually don't go to this public library. It's forbidden. Even though this building is the girls' school right next to it. So you would go to school every day and you'd be right next to all the books in the world, but you wouldn't be able to read them because they're secular and they're forbidden.
Do you read any other books except these Judaism books?
So, you know, it's a free world. There's a library. You can go wherever you'd like, whatever you want to read. But it might just be for entertainment purposes that you want to read other books. But if you want to really know what's life about and where am I needed, I mean, we have so much to learn and read. Who has time, you know? And
yeah, we were reading all the time. Reading was a very big. Reading is very big in the Hasidic community.
Reading what?
Reading mostly religious scripture. Not a lot of. Pretty much nothing else. I haven't been to any libraries.
I don't know if you can hear it, but rap music is playing really loud from the car in the back. Across the street, and the black ghetto begins. That's how they live here, side by side, the ultra-isolated Orthodox Jews and the poorest, criminal sections, the African-American population of New York.
you can tell on the buildings. This building is a typical building built for the Hasidic community, the one with a beige brick. You see those balconies on it that are staggered. These balconies are built for the holiday that's going to be here next month. You're supposed to have a hut that's open to the sky, so if you don't have a private balcony, you can't have that gorgeous holiday. The gates around the windows are also a sign because people like to have that extra space. When you have so many kids, you're not going out of the house as often, and this way you can put the baby in the window.
If you come to Brooklyn and decide to rent or buy a house, with a probability of 70 to 80%, it will be owned and rented to you by a Jew. And most likely, it would be a Hasidic Jew.
So many people I know work in construction at different levels of it.
No, really. It seems that most of the buildings in Brooklyn are owned by the Hasidim.
Because of all the persecution that Jews went through in Europe, in Russia, in Poland, and in the Holocaust. And they all came out from the war. All the parents wanted to make a life of themselves. And they made sure all their children get a proper education, and they did. That's why they wanted my son to be a lawyer, my son should be a doctor, my son should be a businessman. And that's why, after hard work, they made money. Money doesn't fall from trees.
Think about it like a Hungarian Jew that was just saved from the Nazis, saved from the Holocaust, and he makes his way to New York. And he's walking down the street and he sees a building for sale, and he has to put out, let's say, $100,000. Your average person is like, $100,000? What if I lose it? My life savings, how am I going to get it together? A guy that just survived Auschwitz, he says, $100,000? That's what I'm worried about? What's the worst that can happen? There's no fear. The fear factor, what am I afraid of? Nothing can scare me after what I saw. And therefore, there's motivation and there's courage, confidence.
Maybe we'll see a better example of it, but this used to say no drugs, no weapons, no smartphones. This is the vigilantes in the community hanging up these stickers, and the same goes for this, like has a picture of a woman with a smartphone and an X.
What surprises me most about the life of Hasidic Jews is that they live in the middle of the most modern city in the world, and yet live as if most of the achievements of the modern world simply do not exist.
This building actually used to be a theater. This was a very well-known theater. There are no theaters on this main street because you don't go to the theater. You're not allowed to go to the theater.
As a child, I used to go, sometimes alone, sometimes with friends, to movie theaters, like in Times Square. Well, I had to make a whole escape plan every time. We had to put on a hoodie and sunglasses and sneak onto you just had to make it to the train station, because on the train there wasn't a lot of Hasidic people. Really, it was figuring out which train was gonna have the least potential of seeing someone that I don't want to see right now. It was a game in a way. It felt like freedom. I can't really explain why, but the idea of going to movie theaters felt like freedom. Nobody else is there because it was an indoors place, so I could know that no other Hasidic people would be there, and I could just, enjoy the movies, the popcorn and everything, and be free without thinking or being paranoid that somebody will see me doing all those horrible things like eating popcorn that's not kosher and, drinking drinks that might not be kosher, etc., and watching movies. Yeah, I don't know why they don't like movies. Make Jewish movies, like the Hasidic people. Make Hasidic movies. But why just no movies at all? No movies at all, no video at all. No, they even have kosher cameras that have the video disabled.
So this is one of my favorite stops. This is the kosher phone store. See, it's Talk Kosher. Did you notice that people have kosher phone?
For example, as I showed you before, I have an iPhone. In Williamsburg, they have Samsungs. Just kidding. They don't typically have smartphones. They have the flip phones, as I said.
Officially, you're not allowed to have a smartphone. Officially. But you can see these phones that have a kosher symbol on them. They're not just flip phones. All of these, they say that they're kosher, ma'ushar, which means the internet has been blocked. And now they even says talk kosher on the camera because the camera's internet has been disabled. No internet, no video, no Wi-Fi on the camera.
They never told us the internet exists. They definitely did not want us to see it or know about it. In shuls, there was these posters that did talk about the internet, but they weren't targeting kids, they were targeting adults. It was saying how bad the internet is and how we should stay away from it, and you know, similar nonsense. That's how I had to get good at computers, basically, because they were not made available to me, and I had a really strong thirst for knowledge, so I just had to borrow other people's computers. Well, I didn't know it was the internet, to be honest. I just thought it was the app, the browser. I had no idea that to go to google.com and to start from the google.com. I didn't realize that I'm connecting to another person's phone or to another person's computer. I figured that out over time. Kept on clicking on things and a lot of ads and I kept on clicking on everything on the internet, and that's how I explored. Anything I could find, because I had this thirst for knowledge and I wanted to know everything. So I would see, if I would see an advertisement, even if it was completely unrelated to anything I was interested in, I would still try to find out more information about that just so I have. So I have like a lot of useless, random knowledge in my head right now. I would say it is the story of how I got good at computers. It's one of the reasons I got good at computers. This is my desk. I pretty much spend my entire life here. I run the company Telan Technologies. I do remote support, custom-built computers, support for the computers that I build, and just pretty much anything an IT company normally does. That's it. I just scan my hand, that's it. Pretty hard. There's actually two in this hand. There's one here and one here. And in this hand there's one here, alongside this bone. I use these for pretty much what you just saw, authentication and pretty much that, authentication, like locks, computer, like equipment that can unlock with NFC. But the first time I injected a chip, I was still Hasidic.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I looked Hasidic. I was not Hasidic. I looked Hasidic.
In certain Hasidic groups, you know, they're afraid of technology. You know, if you have the internet, who knows what you see, what you could watch. Here, we're not afraid. We're not impressed with the bad or the potential bad. We're excited about the good that you can do. Rebbe's message, the philosophy was, we want to embrace every technological outlet that we have so we could use it to spread the purpose of life, of you know, Judaism. So that's the Lubavitch way of looking at things. This room is called WLCC, World Lubavitch Communication Center. So when the Rebbe was teaching and speaking from here in Crown Heights, his followers around the world wanted to hear. But in the 1970s and 80s, they didn't have internet, but they did have telephones. Well, each telephone, you know, hooked up to people around the world. So people in Rio de Janeiro were listening. People in Alaska were listening.
It wasn't a radio. It was like a person could call the number and listen to the rabbi.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yes.
The idea of Hasidic Judaism, what makes it different from regular Judaism, is that there's a rabbi and the men would get together with that rabbi.
Any home you go into in our neighborhood, in any Chabad home, you'll see a picture of the Rebbe. It's like even more precious than a grandfather. The relationship that we feel is like devoted his life to teaching us. We are so grateful that there's many pictures of the Rebbe in our homes and in every home in the neighborhood.
All of these marks on my map are different groups, different rabbis that started to do the same thing. And each group was named after the place where it began. See, these are the newspapers, and these are the magazines. This is the one that my family bought. If you look at this, at the newspaper, you can see this is a story about the CIA. This is a story about the village of Nyack. This is a story about UN, Security Council. And what's striking about how these stories are reported is these are ads. So let me show you some more ads. See, this is about the convention. What's unusual about how it's reported? No photos, exactly. And if they do show photos, it's at a distance.
In Hasidic Judaism, the information flow, both in and out, is tightly controlled.
See, the problem with religious people, and this is what happens in Hasidic communities, if you're trying to maintain your religion, your culture, then any outside influence automatically is a danger. When, let's say, for example, the Satmar community in Williamsburg, the other Hasidic community, they escaped the Holocaust, they came here to Brooklyn, they said, okay, we don't trust any outsiders anymore, we had a bad experience. If you know the history in Hungary in 1944, 600,000 Hungarian Jews were taken directly to Auschwitz. They said, okay, the only way to maintain our religion and culture is to exclude ourselves.
The reason the communities are isolated so much are because the people in power want it that way. Why? Because if I had to guess, to keep the power in place.
Can't get an education because who knows what you may learn there. You can't interact with people from other faiths. But the problem with that is you start excluding and everything becomes a threat. Every person becomes a threat. Here we are 70 years after the Holocaust. And it's time to graduate and say, this is not about us being religious. That was never the goal. God didn't say, I need you to be religious. God says, I need this world to be heavenly and united. We're here to fulfill His goal, His need, not our need of being religious and getting to heaven. You see the switch? This is my friend, a Hasidic Jew, and he's all the way from Papua New Guinea.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I have a sister here.
Okay.
She's already converted 3 years ago from Australia.
According to Jewish law, you can convert to Judaism. It's not an easy process. We're the only religion that doesn't look to proselytize and convert people to our religion. On the contrary, if somebody comes along and says, yes, I want to convert to Judaism, we say, sorry. If they come back 3 times and they're doing it for sincere reasons, that they're saying, I want to be part of the Jewish family, then you go through like a 2-year process under rabbinical supervision.
What makes them really, really different is that they do outreach work. They're like Mormons in the sense that they try to bring in Jews into the fold.
You know, it's not 4 monthly installments of $19.99. It's a rigorous process. And the final step is you go to the mikveh, the ritual bath, and when you come out, you're as Jewish as any Jew in history. You're sort of reborn in the sense that now you have a Jewish soul. So this is called a mitzvah tank. So let's say there's a Jew in New York City that doesn't have the black boxes, the tefillin, which Alexander just showed you. He doesn't have them at home.
Этот тфилин шелрош, тфилин, который одевается на голову. В кожаной коробке есть свитки из пергамента, на котором написаны ключевые моменты из Пятикнижья.
So this mitzvah tank will go to the streets of Manhattan and will go with yeshiva students, and boys will come off, or girls, depending on what the observance is, and say, excuse me, sir, excuse me, ma'am, are you Jewish? And the person will say, what's it any of your business? Then you know they're Jewish. If they're very polite and say, no, sorry, you say, okay, they're not Jewish. But if they get nasty, that means you struck a nerve or hit a chord, you know? So then you say, oh, I have the black boxes. Do you want to put on these black boxes? They're called tefillin, you know, after your bar mitzvah. And the person says, no, thank you, I don't need that. And you say, I know you don't need it. You're not doing it for you. You're doing it because God needs it. And the guy says, no, really, no. And the boy starts taking the black box and rolling up the sleeve and starts putting it on his arm. And the guy's like, no, I don't need this. And you say, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, God is one. And this secular Jew begins to cry because you touched his essence.
Это делается для того, чтобы бесконечный свет Всевышнего пришел в этот мир, пришел в этот момент и дал питание своего рода, духовное и, соответственно, физическое питание человеку, и аккумулируешь энергию, с которой ты будешь жить следующие 24 часа. И это энергия самой высокой святости, которая тебе поможет даже в самом банальном вести себя как человек. Есть такой момент, когда интеллект рациональный, просто ему надо отдохнуть, надо ему дать отдохнуть. И для этого выпивается рюмочка, не для рюмочки, хотя можно и для этого тоже.
Thanks.
Thank you. That's good. Chaim. To life. And it
Means to life.
means to life. There's a difference between life and existence. Existence is, you eat, you sleep, and then there's life, the whole point of existence. So we say l'chaim, to life. Don't focus on your existence, focus on your life, which means the purpose for which you were created. And the Niet nikava krami baga adnava. Ay Niet nikava krami baga adnava. Nikava krami baga adnava. So when you try to raise a child, what you're trying to do is raise their pleasure. So when a kid is 2-3 years old, their pleasure comes from taste and touch, right? That's all they can experience. So then you try to raise their pleasure should come from feeling neat. The kid should feel respectable. By the time the kid's 8 or 9, their pleasure should come from like a good intellectual thing, like a good riddle, a good, story, an intellectual idea. When they're older, their pleasure should come from music, for example. They should have an appreciation for music, 11, 12 years old.
Kind of traditional melodies, mostly?
Yeah. Like old ancient Hasidic melodies.
So MP3 players are allowed?
With restrictions. So they didn't allow SD cards, because then you can switch out music. So I actually had an SD card that was glued in, so that it couldn't be changed. I can show you that one. I have it. Yes, that was or Jewish lectures or things like that.
What is Jewish music like? It's kind of traditional music, or what?
Some are traditional, some are not. There's a lot of different ones.
What the songs are about?
All of them are different. Some of them are verses of the Bible, some of them are just songs.
About life? Love?
Not love, but life, yes. Unfortunately.
This is what Hasidic music sounds like. The music you're allowed to listen to. Would you listen to it when you're 13 to 15 years old?
Do you listen to Hasidic rap, Hasidic rock?
Not really.
He's a famous rapper from Israel. Right now we in 770 live, making the groove grind. We got everything going from here to the Rebbe. We got the king welcoming us and it's now enemy. Everything we gotta do is make it rise. Everything we gotta do, we gotta do it live. It's my freestyle, continuously non-stop. I gotta tell you something, man. We gotta give it to the top. Straight to God, straight to the things that we make. Straight to God and start praying for his thanks. All we gotta do is just continue his work. It's the Shluchim song, baby. Yeah, that don't hurt. Oh, okay, я был сделан в Одессе и родился в Бруклине.
Был сделан в Одессе?
И родился в Бруклине.
Класс. Одесса — прекрасный город.
I don't remember names, but I had a small collection of music that I had saved on a separate MP3 player that was not Jewish music. And it was mostly what I could download because I didn't really have a computer, so I was limited with a lot of things. So whatever I could find, I downloaded. And that's pretty much it. And I just played the same music again and again for like a few years and barely added anything. I listened to so much Katy Perry in those days. I'm not even joking. I had a few of her albums because that's what I found, and she's a pretty popular singer. I found that. So that was available. I listened to so much Katy Perry. Seriously, I don't know how many hours I spent on that. I'm actually still on that journey with music. I'm still figuring out what I like. So I don't know.
But you obviously know who Kanye West is.
What?
But you obviously know who Kanye West is. Kanye West.
No, never heard of it.
Paris Hilton.
We have our Jewish guys.
Really?
We have Herschel Gerfinkel.
Oh man. But I don't know. Brad Pitt.
Nope.
No.
We don't know any of these.
Wow. Amazing.
When we grow up, we don't know about celebrities. When we grow up, we're not aware that there's a Hollywood, that there's celebrities, that there's a whole industry of being famous.
Kids here don't know anything about superheroes. They don't know anything about like SpongeBob and Batman. They have a completely different frame of reference for entertainment. Children especially here are very, very sheltered.
Another impression I got when I first came to Hasidic Williamsburg is that I'm in a preschool or on a playground. Children are everywhere. Half of the people in the street are kids. Small kids, to be exact.
This is my daughter Shayna, my wife Rifki. This is Menachem Mendel. He's named after the Rebbe. Avram Tzvi, Chana, and where's Yanko? Oh, Yanko's in the store.
Guys. So we have 5 children.
No, 2 are missing. We're not here.
So we have 7.
They're with my parents.
And this is not a final number, right?
Right.
So what's gonna be the final one?
Oh, God knows.
You know, we do have large families. For example, my mother-in-law is one of 15 kids. Yeah. And there's a community from our circles that lives in Israel. They have 23 children. So the Israeli newspaper did a report. The reporter came down and they came over to the teenage daughter and they said, when you get married, do you want to have such a large family? She said, oh no, thank you very much. 16 and that's it. 23, what am I, crazy? 16, 17, let's be normal here. Hello. Come inside, guys. Okay. Let's see.
Well, birth control is officially forbidden. That's really why you have so many children. But also, it's a woman's career is her family, and having like only 4 children is like having only a paralegal career.
Well, when you have a big mission to fulfill, we're trying to bring heaven down to earth and God down to earth. We need all hands on deck, right? There's a big job to do. If I'm just going to be myself or me and my wife, how much can we get done already? So let's have a tribe. Let's have a massive family. Let's have a crew.
Like all of these toys are kosher. There's no Barbie. There is no sexy images or no makeup kits. But they also have a lot of their own toys that they create. Is the mommy Menchie's. It's part of a figurine set, and this set has the characters that are mommies, which are mothers, right? There's really no adult woman that is not a mommy. You get married and you become a mommy, and they're going to the synagogue. They have the accessories to go to the synagogue, and this is a different company that does the exact same thing. Family characters.
When I was in school and we had certain books that we had to use for learning, it was for kids, so there was pictures and animated, things, and some areas were covered with black ink. And if you looked really closely, you could see what was covered, and it was usually just anytime there was a girl or woman in the picture, they would cover that, and I still don't get that. It wasn't even anything inappropriate for kids. It was children's books.
Everything in life here, we're going this way, is extremely gender segregated. Men and women are very segregated. Men are taught to look down when they talk to women. You're not allowed to joke with women. You're not allowed to have a casual meal. You're really not allowed to get in contact with women, except when arranged for the marriage.
Well, in Jewish life, we don't date until we're actually ready to get married.
Mm-hmm.
So we have separate schools for boys, separate for girls. Socializing is separate.
Do you know what in Orthodox synagogues they have what's called a mechitza? It's a separation between men and women. And all these liberal Jews, oh my God, look at that, racism. Families can't, men and women can't sit together. You don't treat women respectfully. They have, a different section. It's the exact opposite. God says, when a husband and wife sit together, speak to each other. Don't talk to me. It's very uncomfortable if you see a married couple and a stranger comes and he starts talking to the husband or the wife. There's like an intrusion of privacy. So God says, if you want to talk to me, but if you're sitting with your wife or your kid, talk to them. So there has to be the separation and boundaries.
A lot of people imagine that if you grow up here, you must be dying to leave. But actually, you're dying to have a gorgeous wedding, because the schools here double as wedding venues. So the ballroom that used to be the huge auditorium for the Eastern District High School is now a wedding venue and a lunchroom. Like, I got married in my high school. Seeing weddings held in the same places you're educated is so appropriate, because it speaks to what is going on in your mind as you're young. You're like seeing yourself, I'm gonna be this gorgeous bride. And
when we're actually ready to get married, which means we're ready to invite another person into our life, not just enjoy each other's company, but actually become one, then that's when we'll start to date. And we're looking for marriage. We're looking for a spouse. And so we don't waste any time. It's not social, the dating process. We actually call it meeting. We meet to see if we want to get married, but we don't enter a relationship before marriage. So generally you call a matchmaker and say, I'm ready to get married. If you know any good, explain what kind of values you have, what kind of life you're looking for. So it could be a matchmaker will say, I have a great idea, someone for you to meet, and then you can have your meeting where you go out somewhere and you can sit and talk, and you see if you think he's the kind of husband you're looking for. We'll call a lot of people that know, where does he work, or who are his friends, or who's his family. And we'll make a lot of phone calls to get to know the person on paper, and see if it makes sense. Is it safe to like him? Is it a good idea? Is he even what I'm looking? Does he have the same values as me? Do people like him? Is he kind? Is he good? You do that research before, and then you really go out just to see if the chemistry is there. We keep the matchmaker. Every time you come home from a meeting, you call the matchmaker. So we would call our cousin, who was the one that set us up, and say if you're actually interested in meeting again. So that it stays like not too personal, and everybody always has a way out. You're never stuck just because you're afraid to say no. So we work through matchmaker, but once it's obvious, it becomes really clear, and then you don't need more than a few weeks to know that you want to get engaged. Once a woman gets married, she should cover her hair. So she can cover it any way she'd like, with a hat, a scarf, and the common in our community is with a wig. So you'll see here, she's just coming from the wig shop with her another wig.
When a woman gets married, she will start to cover her hair, and the head covering she wears tells us a lot about how religious she is. So like a woman who wears a scarf is a lot more religious than a woman who wears a full-on wig, which is very modern.
It's just the most natural looking. I mean, it's all made out of human hair, real hair, so it just looks real, Very fun colors. There's no rules on color, length, style, so it's whatever you want to wear. It's really as long as your hair is covered. So beauty and modesty is really, it's not a contradiction, it works together.
But the idea is the covering. And modesty in general is about that there's something so good about covering. And God tells us what parts should be covered and what should not.
How many wigs do you have?
I have 3 about. Yeah, it's just good to have a few to see, get to like switch.
They range from about 1,200 to 6,000.
What?
Yeah.
So most women here will actually shave their heads. When they get married, their head will be shaved. I definitely shaved my head for 5 years. And I was very, you know, in the beginning it was just like, that's what you did, what's the big deal?
The yarmulke is because you cover your head to remind you that there's something above you, which is Boga, which is God.
So you wear this all the time?
Yeah. Except when we go to the barber. We take it off for him.
What about shower?
Or the shower.
Okay. Sleeping?
If it falls off, it falls off, but we don't take it off. It usually falls off. That's fine.
I wear it because it's part of the Jewish tradition. And this is not a kippah, by the way. This is just a baseball cap. But usually, when I go outside, I wear a kippah, and because I'm a very proud Jew. I proudly identify with my Jewish heritage. To be honest, I don't know from a religious standpoint why someone would wear a kippah. You would have to ask a rabbi, because they never explained that to me. I still don't know why. They told us that our wisdom would fall out of our heads if we didn't cover it up. They never told us a real one. I do know, however, that wearing it is a traditional thing as well. That is something I can accept without logic, because tradition is not necessarily logical.
When I'm walking in the Hasidic neighborhood, I feel like I've traveled into the past, or that I'm on a movie set. People look like they are extras for a historical film. They look so atypical for New York, but this is their regular look. They dress like this every day. This is a contemporary Hasidic outfit.
So the men wear hats. On weekends they wear the big fur one. We're going to see some soon because people start to wear them on Friday.
There are certain places where you can't, biblical, where you can't cut your hair. You can't use a blade. Here, 5 places on your head. We just let it grow, and some had it, once you're letting it grow, some of them said let it grow already all the way. But
I remember the first time I went to buy a hoodie, which is not a Hasidic piece of clothing. It was, I had a whole debate with myself, a whole dilemma, which color it should be or which set of colors. So here's the dilemma. I knew that black would be the best color that Hasidim, meaning my parents, would appreciate. But that's not the color that I wanted at the time. I wanted more of a mix-up of colors, sort of a bit more rebellious, a bit more loud. I ended up going with the gray and black to sort of stay on both sides.
Everything they sell is modest. So it has the long sleeves, covers the knee, but yet beautiful.
Just basically you have to cover your collarbones, and your elbows should be covered, and your knees should be covered. Basically,
in any fashion?
Yeah, and no pants. So it's like skirts and dresses, but we don't wear pants.
Okay, why that?
I guess we don't want to show the shape of our legs, so it's more modest when you have a skirt and...
And also, women are supposed to wear women's clothing, and men are supposed to wear men's clothing. And women are not supposed to wear men's clothing. Yeah. So pants is considered the clothing of a man, so that's where a woman doesn't wear.
If you're in the room alone, we dress modestly, because modesty is also just about your own identity, of that invitation to recognize that I'm not just an external being, a physical being. I'm an internal. I have a soul. I have yearning. I have passion. And by being covered, it somehow brings our focus inward. Kosher grocery. This is something typical in a kosher store. These are called rugelach. They're little rolled doughs with a little chocolate inside. Typical. And here we look for the kosher sign. It has the circle with a K inside. This one actually has 4 kosher signs. Okay. Like I was saying, some people only trust certain rabbis, so if they put all the 4, then it's covered. Kosher means appropriate, which means appropriate to what God asks of us. In a kosher kitchen, and this is what you'll see in a Jewish home, is, if you'll notice, double of everything. We have 2 ovens, we have 2 sinks, we have 2 microwaves, 2 dishwashers, double side of the cabinets. And that's because in a kosher kitchen, we keep milk and meat separate. So we take God's opinion very seriously in our home, and we try to set everything up in the home the way that would make him comfortable. And in the Bible, God says that he asks the Jewish people to not mix milk and meat. To cook them separately, eat them separately. So that's why we have double of everything. 2 sets of pots, 2 sets of dishes, 2 sets of cutlery. Hummus. Something, horseradish is a big one here. We have a lot of food that is not typical in America, but typical Eastern European food. And that's because that's our grandparents and our great grandparents, and it's just became the food we got used to. So, for example, herring, they serve it usually on Saturday morning in the synagogue after they have the prayers. The other thing is that bugs are not kosher, insects. So when we buy produce, lettuce, we'll wash it very well and check each piece to make sure that there's no bugs, because that's not kosher. So now we have nothing against mixing milk and meat, nothing against a non-kosher animal, but out of sensitivity to God, because of who asked us, it becomes a privilege and an honor. We feel honored to keep this dietary. So in life, it's never about what you're doing. It's usually about who you're doing it for. That's where the pleasure is, that's where the joy is. Yeah, we keep kosher not because we think it's a good idea, but because of who asked us. Bracha to make? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, they learn the blessings. Like 3-4 years old is when they learn to master the blessings here.
I already knew it.
But we make a blessing before we eat. Every food that we eat has a specific blessing before we eat it. Amen.
Mommy.
Do you want to make the bracha? Fruits have one blessing. Vegetables have another. Grains have another. Wine has another. At every meal, at the end of the meal, we take out a whole pile of these books, and this has the after blessings. So it depends on what you ate. If you had bread, this tells you the blessing to make before. So you see this is for bread, for baked goods that are not bread. It's the first time in the season, then you make an additional blessing. This one. So it's again conscious. You haven't had this in a while. Be thankful to God for this new food that just started growing. But so much of our life is so unconscious. We're just running from one thing to the next. We don't even, so it teaches us slow down, be mindful. What you're doing, who you're doing it with, who you're doing it for.
Do you hear this sound? The siren is wailing. It's not an airstrike. This siren indicates the beginning of Sabbath. You can hear it absolutely everywhere in the neighborhood. This way everyone knows that it's time to stop your work and start the Sabbath rituals.
So is that real, that on Sabbath you don't drive, you don't use your mobile phone?
Absolutely.
Nothing?
Nothing. And no cooking. We prepare everything Friday before the Sabbath. So,
So what do you do the whole day?
Yeah. So what do we do? Yeah. Exactly. So it's a day of, and that's a good question, like everybody's so busy fixing things. We're working and we're researching and doctors are healing and builders are building and scientists are figuring things out. But the question is, why are we all so busy? Why are we so busy? What are we trying to achieve? What if nobody was sick? What if everybody had a big, beautiful house? What if nobody needed money? What would we do if nobody needed things to be fixed? So that God says, He didn't create the world just for us to be busy, 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 busy. There's actually a reason He created the world. And when we're not, we have to take time to stop being busy, 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 to actually remember that there is a goal. And that it's not scary to think of, well, what would we do if we had nothing to fix? What would we do? We would enjoy the best part of the world. We would enjoy each other. We would enjoy being together. So what do we do all Saturday? Yeah, so you wake up in the morning and you're not running anywhere, you know? We have a nice breakfast together and you sit and have your cheesecake and we can talk and then the kids are playing and then we go to synagogue and you learn together. We take out the books Saturday morning and learn something, then go to synagogue and have prayer.
You can sit in there.
And that's my father's spot.
Okay.
So that's another thing in a Jewish home.
So could you tell me about that?
Yeah.
So why can't you sit
in this
on the chair?
spot? Okay, so this is my father's spot, and this is my mother's. And another thing that God asks of us is to honor our mother and father. And one of the big ways that we honor them is by not sitting in their seats. We don't call them by their first name. You look for ways to help make their life a little easier. That's called honoring. Like they're carrying bags, you offer to carry it for them. You know they want a tea or a drink of water, you run and get it for them instead of them getting it for themselves. That's called honoring. You know, in the Jewish home, it's like the mother that definitely sets the tone for the house, but the Jewish mother puts her husband up on a pedestal, and makes him the king of the home. And together, it's just a perfect, beautiful balance. What the grandparents do, what the mother, the father, the oldest child, each child has their place in the family. And the more we allow everyone to be themselves and to fully, be the mother you are, be the father you are, be the brother, the sister, the son, the grandson, and feel the pleasure in your position.
So yes, you could be part of the family. No, you cannot leave the family. Just like a child can't divorce his parents. If you're Jewish, you're stuck. I mean, blessed. And that's a beautiful thing. We're a family, we belong together, we are a unit, and there's nothing that can destroy that unit. It's essential.
Very low percent of people who leave, especially because you get married at such a young age. Then you start having kids. What happens more likely is that people will get more modern rather than leave altogether. But I would say it's like a percent. It's a guess, but very negligible.
But is it difficult to leave the community?
It's very difficult to leave. You're extremely intertwined. Everything is here.
So I still live in the area and I still have friends in the Hasidic community and I still hang out with people who are in the Hasidic community, but I myself am not. And by that I mean I don't participate in the religion and at all, and in many of the practices. So
there's two things. If you're Jewish, you're Jewish. Your religious observance has nothing to do with how Jewish you are. You know what I'm saying? It's like a woman who's pregnant. You're either pregnant or you're not. You can't become more pregnant. So the same thing, if you're Jewish, you're Jewish. Sorry.
It seems interesting that Ari left the community, but still lives in a Hasidic neighborhood. Once, he even had to move, because some strangers from the Hasidic community somehow found his address and started stalking him, ringing the intercom and trying to talk to him, convincing him to come back, and so on.
Статистика молодых людей, которые не удовлетворены, но преследовать их в нашей комьюнити, наша комьюнити отличается от других комьюнити с тем, что мы греем. Мы греем, мы не отталкиваем.
I see sometimes people don't fit in and their spouse accommodates them, family members accommodate them, their mother, people keep their secrets. My family wasn't so accommodating with making room for me. Like, my mother-in-law hated me for it and wanted the marriage to end. I think it's a very low chance I would have left if things hadn't, like if there wouldn't be a million pieces coming together.
So you never use force. You have to dig deeper and try to express the truth of the message. Kids don't want to be religious. So if a kid grows up with the message that you have to be religious, you gave him the wrong message, and then he'll probably rebel, and then you'll try to force him and it won't work.
The transition between living with family and living by myself it happened slowly over time. And you know, at first I went away for a little bit, came back, and then I moved away, and then I'm still around. So it wasn't instant, but the difference is significant. I love the fact that I have my own space. In the community, I didn't have such a thing as privacy because I was living with my parents in their house, going to school, and you know, on the way home, pretty much my entire life was within the Hasidic community, and at every moment I was within range of a Hasidic adult. I don't know, I guess it just feels safe in a way, where it's mine, and this is a place I can be here without anyone else intervening in my life.
I find outside life a lot harder than I expected, but at least I never think like, what could have been? Like, what if?
But at the same time, yeah, it is lonely not having, you know, my siblings running around and just not having other people in general in this house. So it has the good and the bad.
To be honest, I can hardly digest all the stories I've heard so far. It's really hard to grasp. The way I see it, it reminds me of a sect. Why? There's the cult of personality. Remember multiple portraits of the rabbi in the apartments? There's a very strict control over all aspects of life. This music's playing again. There's a very strict control over all aspects of life. A lot of very strict rules. In general, there's hardly any room in a person's life for anything other than serving God.
Религия, по мнению психиатров, это отклонение от нормы. Религия — это то, что на какой-то... За гранью религии находится фанатизм. Вы немножко нащупали это. Есть вещи, ну это уже, считайте, что мое понятие. Есть такая вещь, вот, богопротивная. Фанатизм, вообще, мне кажется, даже религия, когда это теплая жизнь человека, когда человек живет, является самим собой. Коли он еврей, он живет как еврей. Когда человек, любой человек, когда он живет самим собой, мне кажется, Всевышнему это очень приятно. Но когда это переходит грани и становится религией, возможны эксцессы.
So when you're trying to be religious and trying to become something, you're never going to be happy. You're always going to be depressed. I'm not good enough. I was good enough. I should be good enough. The focus is so much on you. Hasidic Jews are known to be happy and joyous because they've taken the emphasis off themselves and they put it where it belongs, on God and on their family and on their wives. So if a guy goes to the synagogue and prays 6 hours a day and learns Hasidic discourses and comes home and treats his wife like crap, what did it help that he prayed for it? The whole point of the synagogue was, when you come home, can you be nice to your wife and kids? Or are you trying to do your spiritual exercise in the synagogue? And that's where people go off track. If you want to summarize Hasidic philosophy, don't try to get to heaven. Try to bring heaven, God, down to earth.
And I don't deny that many or even the majority of the Hasidic community really like their lifestyle, that they are happy with their lives. I'm not the only one to judge, especially being an outsider here. I only wish that every community member had the right to choose this lifestyle. And if someone doesn't like the Hasidic lifestyle, they could leave, like Ari and Frida did. But their stories show that right now, it's a very complicated and painful step to take. What do you think about it? Leave your opinions in the comments below. I'm really into this topic. It's one of the most interesting stories I've covered, so I will gladly discuss it